When I was a kid, my dad had a record collection, a stack of albums and an old record player. Every once in a while, he would pull one out, carefully set the needle down, and listen to it as if it was the greatest thing in the world. More often, because they were hidden up in the attic, my brothers and I would pull them out when he wasn't around, place one on, and try and scratch it like we were DJs, probably ruining those albums forever. As a kid, I thought it was terrible. The music sounded old, and the whole process felt outdated. I remember thinking, why would anyone want that? Especially when we had cassettes and CDs and the radio and all of these exciting things. But something funny happened a few years ago. I started to appreciate that old music in that format. And one year for Christmas, I asked for a record player. And this is what I received. The one I own not only can play records, but it also can play CDs and cassettes, the radio, and even connects with Bluetooth. And if you don't want to know what a record or a CD or a cassette is, talk to someone 40 or over. And if you don't understand Bluetooth, we've got an AV team or young adults that can explain how all of that works for you as well. But I love this because it combines. It's an interesting mix, of the old and the new. Something familiar, comforting, being given a new purpose. This morning, we're continuing in our series last week today, taking that journey with Jesus through the events of his last week on earth. A journey to the cross that for many of us is a familiar story. A moment in time that appears in all four of the gospel accounts in one form or another. Our passage from Matthew 26 is also found in Mark chapter 14, Luke chapter 22, and in greater detail over a few chapters in John 13 to 17. The story of the Last Supper that Jesus would share with his disciples. Familiar words, but hopefully this morning viewed through a different lens, just as it was for the disciples during the moments that they would share with Jesus. This is because, as Matthew records for us, that this took place during the festival of the unleavened bread, during Passover. Now, this was an extremely important time on the Jewish calendar, moments when they would come together to retell and rehear their history, to sing psalms of praise and to share in a beautiful, reflective meal together. Each item that would come on the table representing a part of their past. God's goodness in bringing them out of Egypt and setting them free from slavery. So it wasn't just a meal, but a storytelling experience. Now, for those who, like me, didn't know what this involves, I'll share a brief description of what a traditional Passover feast or Seder meal would involve based on what I found on the internet. The Seder follows a specific order that includes blessings and cups of wine, traditionally 4 of them, retelling the Exodus story through readings and discussions, eating the symbolic foods and explaining their meaning, sharing a festive meal together, and songs and prayers celebrating freedom and God's faithfulness. As I mentioned, each food or drink item would bring with it a special symbolism. So there was matzah, the unleavened bread, flat bread symbolizing the haste with which the Israelites left Egypt. Their bread didn't even have enough time to rise. Maror, or bitter herbs, usually something like our horseradish, representing the bitterness of slavery. Cheriset, a sweet mixture of apples, nuts, wine, and spices that would resemble the mortar used by the Hebrews, slaves, to build for the Egyptians. Carpus, which was a green vegetable dipped in salt water to represent both springtime life and the tears of slavery. Zeroah, a roasted shank bone symbolizing the Passover lamb sacrificed in ancient times, blood placed on the doorsteps to save the firstborn. And bitza, or roasted egg, a symbol of mourning for the destroyed temple, but also new life. So when Jesus requested that the disciples go and make their preparations in our passage, these men had an idea of what was coming, what their job was, what they were going to hear, experience, and to expect. They had heard these stories, they'd eaten these foods, they'd shared their blessings, they had enjoyed these moments throughout their lives with family and friends. They were very familiar with what was going to happen on that night. But as Jesus began to speak with them and they reclined by the table, they came to realize that this was no ordinary Passover meal, that what was familiar was now going to be repurposed into something different, that what was old was now going to be set aside or reshaped for something new. And this begins with Jesus' words in verse 21, words that we read would have shocked and saddened the disciples. Men who had gathered to celebrate, but were met with the terrible news that truly I tell you, one of you will betray me. Everyone's trying to enjoy their night together, and Jesus comes through, seemingly pun intended, to kill the mood. But these words are intentional, and this moment is perfect for the announcement because this meal was to celebrate the goodness of God, the sacrificing of lambs for the protection of their people. And it's the moment where Jesus is sharing with his closest friends that he is the lamb that will be slain for all people. That a new covenant is being made, that he is going to be sacrificed in order that all people will be saved through his blood. That this old time and way of doing things will be made new through him. But he doesn't stop there because Matthew records after each one asked if it will be them, including Judas, a man who would have washed his hands physically to participate in the meal, but whose hands were spiritually dirty, having already agreed to hand Jesus over, that Jesus then takes two traditional elements of the meal and gives them a deeper meaning through the sacrifice that he's going to make. The first of these is the breaking of the bread. Matzah, or unleavened bread, was there to symbolize the urgency that they left. It's broken in half to symbolize the parting of the Red Sea that was their escape from the Egyptians. And then it was torn traditionally into smaller pieces in order to symbolize the poverty experienced during their time in captivity. But Jesus doesn't bring any of those images to mind. No, he passes it by saying, "Take and eat, this is my body," symbolizing that a new way was being made through him, that all people would be able to pass from sin and death to life through his leading, that his dying would create a new exodus that was to be for everyone. No longer slaves to this world, to their old ways, but would be made free through him as he laid down his body for them. Jesus taking this simple piece of bread, this beautiful symbol of their history, and reshaping it to have a new meaning, not just for his people, but for all people on that night. And then he turns his attention to the second, taking a cup of wine, giving thanks over it, and passing it for all of them to drink from. And he says as they pass it, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." Now it's believed this would have been the third cup of wine that they drank from that night. This was the one that had the red wine in it. Drank to give praise to God, symbolizing the blood of the Passover lamb that was sacrificed. Its blood placed over the door of the Israelite homes, the means by which the avenging angel would pass over their families from Exodus 12 and 13. But in offering it to them in this way, Jesus was highlighting that this was no longer the blood of a lamb that would need to be slain by each family every year over and over again, but that the blood he would shed would protect all people for eternity, would bring true lasting salvation for everyone who believes and was his. That he was doing this thing that he had been told them about, that all of these events would have to happen. Being betrayed, handed over, denied and abandoned, falsely accused, beaten, mocked, and crucified over the coming hours was all for a purpose. that he was taking on the sins of the world in order that all people might be set free. That this was to symbolize the blood of his new covenant, the forgiveness of all sins. Jesus once again taking a symbol of their history, of God's goodness and bringing new life, a new purpose for it in his kingdom. Highlighting for his disciples the importance of these symbols, but more so the message behind them. A new day had come. A new celebration was being established. A new covenant was being entered into. That everything was not going to be as it was. That like the record player I received, the new version came with benefits never thought of or imagined before. That this could be highlighted, yes, one time per year in the intentional breaking of bread and sharing of wine, or it could be acknowledged every time a family got together, offering praise, breaking bread in each other's presence, having a drink of some beverage, thinking of and reflecting on the sacrifice of Jesus to make everything new. A lesson he gave for them, but one for you and I as well. One that extends beyond the meal itself to help us learn what I believe is an important lesson for this Easter season, for us as a church family as we move forward into the future that God is guiding us into. That what was old can be made new. What is familiar and perhaps boring or routine can be reshaped into something original, current, and extraordinary. Can be made new when viewed through the lens of his sacrifice. That these same stories we read every Easter can speak to us in new and fresh ways, can highlight for us new paths, directions, or lessons if we choose to hear them with open ears, hearts, and minds. That we can read the story of his triumphal entry and seek to find ourselves in the crowd. Are we celebrating? Are we part of those that are there because we're caught up in the emotions and the celebration of the season? Or are we seeking to honor the King, ready to give testimony to who he is and what he's done for us? We can listen to the accounts of his teachings, hearing the words, agreeing with the messages. But are we actually living it out? Love for God and love for others in our vertical and horizontal relationships? Are we looking out for ourselves and loving people when it's convenient or we can benefit from it? Are we loving God on Sundays or when it will be helpful to us? Or are we living lives in sacrificial service to him and to others, to each other? We can read the story of the woman who anointed him as we did last week, or the disciple who betrayed him and perhaps question their decisions. But are we willing to choose to sacrifice it all as she did? Or are we going to sell out for just a little bit of earthly comfort as Judas chose? We can read the story of his crucifixion and death as we will in the coming weeks. And with all that we see, read, and hear in our modern world, we can become desensitized to it, to what he went through, what he did for you and for me. We can lose the meaning, the history-making, eternity-changing, and earth-shaking power of what happened on that day. Because we hear it every year, it's familiar and routine for this time of the calendar. Or we can choose this year to read it as we never have before. To consider the sacrifice. To place ourselves in his sandals. To imagine giving ourselves up. Being betrayed by those we love, abandoned by those we call friends and family, being able to save ourselves but choosing instead to be mocked and hit, beaten physically, emotionally, mentally, and then forced to carry our cross. We can choose to put ourselves in the place of being accused and convicted of things we never did. Feel the pain of having those nails driven through our hands and our feet. That crown of thorns pressed down onto our head. The agony of trying to hold our body up or to take in just a simple breath. This year to place ourselves on the cross alongside him and truly see and experience what he did for us. to take this familiar story and see it for the extraordinary moment that it was and is and needs to be for all people. And then, friends, as his people changed by that moment, to view all of our lives through that lens. To see the old, the familiar, the routine as something more. To view work and school and volunteering, hobbies, our routine daily tasks in this way. Not where I have to go, but where I have the privilege of going for him. To show and to share him with others, to be a light in the world. To choose to sit with someone different for lunch or in the locker room, to get our morning coffee, or to go to the bank at a different place than normal, to go inside instead of staying in our car and only going through the drive-thru, to talk to someone we've never connected with before, to walk on the other side of the street, or to go a different way to see who God is leading us to. That we have the opportunity to see our worship in that way as well. That just because we've always done traditionally something doesn't mean we need to do that way currently. And just because something was done before doesn't mean we leave it in the past, as it helps us remember blessings received. That like my record player, our worship should be a tool for all people and all mediums of praise to be offered to God. We need to honor what's been brought us to this place, while highlighting the beauty of what is being done today, what is to come as well. That there's power in the traditional and the contemporary. They speak to us in different ways, and so it's all valuable in bringing his people closer to him. So this Easter, invite family and friends to come with you to church, to sing the beautiful, reflective old hymns, the powerful, lively new worship songs. Invite a neighbor or a stranger to come and hear the good news of what Jesus did for them. Share with someone what God has done or is doing in your life right now and how it can reshape their lives too. This Easter, we need to stop living our lives, stop operating as a church in the familiar and routine because it's comfortable and easy, and perhaps because it's always worked that way. We need to start pushing ourselves to be part of the extraordinary work God is doing right here in Oshawa, because he's taking what was old and making it new all over again.